Good afternoon, Arkansas State, and welcome back to another episode of Around A-State. I'm your host, Blaise Cantrell, and today we have with us Director of Bands here at A-State, Dr. Timothy Oliver. We are super excited to have you with us today, Dr. Oliver.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
No problem. Okay, so we'll start off with hearing a little bit about you and what makes you yourself.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Missouri, so not too far from Jonesboro. It's right in the central part of Missouri, a little small town called Cantrell. About 5,000 people there. And I went to school at Truman State University and earned some degrees there. I get this question a lot from students. I did not start out as a music major. I was in band through junior high and high school and things like that. But like a lot of students now, you get to the point where you have to choose a major, and I was like, well, I'm not really sure. So I chose computer science.
Right.
And the reason why I chose computer science was because I had taken like a simple computer science class in high school, and I thought I knew something about it, not. And so then I was involved in some of the coursework that I had to take that first semester, and I'll never forget this. One of my homework projects was to create code, and it was a random number of integers, and you had to format them in such a way such that the odd number integers had to appear on one side of the screen, and the even numbered had to appear on the other. And I'd been working on this. This is like in the 80s, right? So it's like these old green screen computers and the large tear-off sheets. And I've been working on this for like literally hours. And some person walks by, doesn't even break stride, walks right by and just says, if you put a semicolon there as opposed to a comma, that would work. I was like, no, this can't be that easy. So I did that, and it worked.
I
was like, okay, I can't be doing this the rest of my life. So the next day I went down and changed my major and became a music major and haven't looked back since.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so what led you to pursue a career in music then? Like what led you to, change your major and all that?
Well, I'd been in band for a long time.
Right.
And I was in band my first semester. And, I think some people don't realize, like, for example, here at A-State, the Sound of the Natural State, the majority of the students are not music majors in that band. And,
wow.
For example, it's almost 50 different majors that are represented in the Sound of the Natural State from every college and every department that
I
are
had no
represented
idea.
in the band. And so they're not, and now granted, the largest single major is music majors,
right.
but we have majors from all over the campus. And that was me when I was a freshman. And so I was involved, I was doing some things, and I realized, I could do this, as a career.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I chose, and had some great mentors and some great teachers and had some really good opportunities. And so I was pretty content for a while to be a high school band director. I thought for sure I was going to be a high school band director in either St. Louis or Kansas City, having growing up in Missouri.
Right.
And then had some opportunities to pursue graduate work, and then that led me to Florida State, and then that led me into college teaching, and then by a couple of different universities. I've been here at A-State since 2007.
All right. Well, what about Arkansas State is so special to you? What made you want to come here and teach when you obviously probably had plenty of other options?
Well, one of the things that I have always found very appealing about Arkansas State is the size of the institution.
For
I'll give you an
sure.
example. My first college job, and I went to school at Florida State, which is a very large university. My first college job was at the University of Kansas, a very large university, fine institution, but very large. My second college job was at the Temple University in Philadelphia, again, an even larger school, frankly, from the University of Kansas. Both of those schools are roughly double the size of A-State.
Right.
And you hear the cliche about sometimes how students feel like a number. That was true. And that's nothing bad against those universities. It was just the size of that university
so
sometimes
big.
promoted that feeling. Well, faculty members can feel that way too. I mean, there were some faculty members that I saw maybe once a year, or there were some people I never probably got to know just because the size of the university was so great. Conversely, where I went to school at Truman State for my undergraduate, it was about half the size of Arkansas State. So it was almost the other way, where it was, you knew everyone kind of thing.
Yeah.
So A-State is really, I think, an ideal size because it's large enough to have resources, it's large enough to have a large number of programs and majors and opportunities, but yet still small enough that we can get to know students and they can get to know us and we get to know our colleagues. It's not just, you're just not another cog in a machine like you sometimes are at a different university.
I agree. I do love that about Arkansas State. When I'm walking, like I can pass, the same faces. I recognize the faces. I always feel like I can get closer to my professors in that sense, and it's really something that drew me to this school in the first place. But yeah, I think that that's really awesome. How would you say that the music program has adjusted to the safety procedures through the pandemic?
It's been a challenge, and I think
Yeah.
that's not unique to music. I think every major and every student and faculty staff member there have been challenges with the pandemic. One of the things that we found out very early was that there was a research study that was commissioned by several different professional organizations in music, and it was done through the University of Colorado with some assistance with the University of Maryland. And intuitively, we kind of know this. When you're playing a wind instrument, or when you're singing for that matter, there are aerosols, just like when you're talking, there are aerosols that are being expelled through the instrument. And so one of the things that this research figured out was trying to determine the amount of the aerosols. Combined with that, 6-7 months ago, we really weren't quite sure how exactly COVID was being transmitted. Everybody was freaking out about wiping down surfaces and hand hygiene, which is important. We need to keep doing that.
Absolutely.
But it's also aerosol spread. And so one of the safety precautions that we've had in the Department of Music is to minimize aerosol spread by taking part in the campus guidelines for smaller numbers in the rooms, which also for us meant time reductions, because we figured out through the research that it's not just hand hygiene and distance and masking, but it's also time, exposure, and ventilation. And so all of those things together, we had to go through some significant changes. And every department, every student, every faculty staff member had to do that. But it did present some unique challenges for us. For example, we have 200 plus students in the marching band. And so occasionally we do things indoors. This past season we did nothing indoors.
Right.
It was all outside.
Yes, I would drive by and y'all would be practicing outside, which I figured you would have to do anyway. But on top of all of those safety procedures with the marching band, how would you say it was different teaching it this semester rather than in the past?
Well, the person who teaches our marching band here at A-State is Dr. Stephen Riley, our Director of Athletic Bands. And he does a phenomenal job. And one of the challenges this year was that there was not a lot of drill. And when I say drill, I'm talking about formations, because at football games, the Sun Belt Conference, and this is true of just about every NCAA school this past year, bands were not allowed on the field. We're very lucky here in the Sun Belt that we had a presence at all. There were some colleges and universities that there was no band presence at any of their athletic events. And so we were very lucky. Our chancellor and our athletic director were very, very helpful in advocating for that. That said, we performed only in the stands, and so there wasn't any sort of marching and maneuvering aspect to it. And so that was very different, because normally when you're working in a marching band, you're not only working with the musical component, but also the visual component, making sure everyone is in step, making sure lines are straight, making sure intervals are consistent, and there wasn't any of that this year. So it was really focusing on things like horn visuals and choreography that we would normally do anyway, but just expanding that. And then, of course, making sure we are the sound of the natural state, so we take the music part of it very seriously.
Yes, absolutely. I know that in high school we would work after school on all of our movements and everything like that. So I know it's definitely probably gave you a lot more time to work on other things as far as like the music and everything like that. But I am super happy that y'all did get to be at the games at least, because I know football wouldn't be what it is without the band, in my opinion, the fight song, everything like that. So I'm really glad that y'all did get to be there for that. It just isn't the same when you have to listen to it over the speakers. But with the pandemic and everything, how do you see the future of the band? Do you think these procedures will stay in place, as far as for the next season, or do you think it will change?
It's hard to know exactly.
Right.
As we have figured out, it was roughly a year ago this time was when everything started to, become real with the pandemic. And so whether or not, who's to say, 6 months from now, whether it's going to be back to quote unquote normal. There will be some things that I think that will go back to some measure of normalcy. Other things probably won't. I think sometimes we get into this notion of binary thinking, all or nothing, either or, kind of yes, no sort of thing. And one of the things that the pandemic, in my opinion, has been good for us. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I wish the pandemic
no, absolutely.
Anyway, but there have been some things that have come out of it that have led us to some potential innovations.
Yes.
And so, for example, we realize now that there's a lot of things we can do completely online and completely electronically via Blackboard and things like that. And we were doing a lot of those things already, but now we realized if we had to, we could totally move to that. So essentially, to putting it in a different way, becoming paperless.
Yes.
And so that's been something that's been an innovation. Another thing has also been just the awareness of distance and space. I think, we talk, sounds like you're a former marching band person yourself, so you understand the idea of maintaining an interval and maintaining space.
Yes.
Well, that will not be a problem any longer, because now we are so accustomed to maintaining some sort of distance that will carry over into the teaching of the marching and maneuvering that the band will have to do. So, who's to say exactly what it's going to be like, but I think there will be some things that we will go back to pre-pandemic standards and practices. Other things may yet be still having some adaptations. We'll have to see.
Yes, I agree. It's definitely made us a lot more aware of our surroundings. I know, like, now if someone gets too close to me at the grocery store, I'm just like, I look at them like they're a little crazy. Like, like, it's just like things we wouldn't have even realized before. A year ago, it was so different. I don't even believe, like, we were even wearing masks here in Arkansas a year ago because we didn't really realize the severity of what was going on.
Well, and to that same point, and particularly in the fall, we had to, as I've said to some of my colleagues, it's not so much that the content of what we've been teaching has changed radically, it's the delivery system.
Correct.
In many respects.
Yes.
And so learning how to deliver content in a different way, I will say that I think I did, and I'm not bragging, but I think I did some of my best teaching last fall, because it really forced me to think critically about the objectives and what we were doing, how we were doing it, why we were doing it, and the method in which we were doing it. So that reflection, if you will, that self-assessment, I think will continue to be a practice, hopefully, of many faculty members.
Yes, sir, I do agree. So with everything coming up, is there any specific band events or anything that you're looking forward to or that you're excited about?
Well, I'm always excited about band. That's the one thing that is always the case as a band director. But as far as events, we are trying at this point to have an outdoor concert in April. And because of pandemic restrictions and guidelines, we're not able to have a normal concert in the Fowler Center with our concert bands like we would be accustomed to having. So we're trying to have an outdoor concert. We're working with folks across the university to try to see if that can happen at some point in April. We're also planning the calendar for next year. And at this point, we are still planning on events and concerts and things happening like they could, quote unquote, normally. And so just going through the exercise of planning the next academic year calendar, that's been very soothing, and it brings the idea of, okay, we are going to return to some normal events and some of these different things that we've grown accustomed to. I think one thing that people sometimes forget is the A-State bands were formed in 1929, and during that time, there's been a lot of things that have happened to both our university and our society.
Yes.
For a while during World War II, for example, there was no band program, just like there was no athletic program. It was temporarily suspended.
Right.
And it recovered and grew even larger. So I'm very optimistic and hopeful that, while we haven't had to suspend operations like we had to do in the 40s, it has been an adjustment. We've been able to take stock, and I'm quite confident we have great faculty, we have great students and staff, that we're going to be able to not only resume but also become stronger because of this.
And I'm super excited and hope that y'all get to go and just grow and continue to grow over time. On that topic of growing the band, if someone maybe who's coming into college or is already here is interested in joining the band, how would they go about getting in contact to do that?
First thing is just to let us know. One of the things that I think is a popular misconception, which I touched on a second ago, is that people think you have to major in music in order to be in the band program, and that's just not the case. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Some of the ensembles are almost exclusively music majors.
Right.
But ensembles like the Sound or the Natural State are not. The majority of those students are not music majors. Our concert band, which is one of our 3 concert ensembles we have, most of the students in there are not music majors. So there are opportunities for students to be a part of our program. Furthermore, there are lots of scholarship opportunities. I'm very proud of the fact that every eligible student within our band program receives a scholarship to participate in the band. So it really is a win-win kind of situation. And finally, for most people, you were talking about how you spent a lot of time in your own high school band.
Yes.
For most people, the time that we spend in college band is less than what some people spend in high school band. For example, most high school marching bands start there, if they're very competitive, they start in like July, and work through the summer. We start 1 week before the semester begins.
Wow.
And so the time commitment is a very different time commitment from the high school to the collegiate level.
Right, and I had no idea about any of that at all. I thought, maybe you guys did things over the summer and all that like we did in high school.
Not at all.
Well, that is very impressive that y'all are able to do everything that you can do and that we see, and that's so, it's such a production that you're able to do it that quickly.
Well, it's just like most things. Athletes sometimes talk about the speed of the game, right? Most things at the college level, we go faster. You can read an entire textbook in a semester. You have, weeks to complete a large project as opposed to a whole semester. So the pace at which we move at the collegiate level is much faster. And frankly, most people really like that.
Yes.
Because there's always the jokes about the band director who says, okay, one more time, 5 more times. And, we don't have to do that here at the college level.
Well, that is awesome. Okay. Well, to close us out today, is there any other events that you guys have coming up that you would like to plug today and let everyone know about?
I think in general, I would just like to say that the A-State bands, we have a place for you. And whatever your major, if you're interested in continuing your music studies or your music path, we're here to help. And that's not just true of the bands, that's true of the choirs. Any of our music events are very open to all folks. So come join us. You have a place.
Okay, yes, I love that. Awesome. Well, we are super excited that you joined us today. We have had so much fun talking about the band here at Arkansas State. And big thank you to you for coming and taking your time out of your day to come here and talk to us. But that is all we have for today. So we will wrap up this episode of Around A-State, and we will see you guys next time.